Hello and welcome back to Blog Investigations. This is part 2 of Module 5 of the free class from PIClassroom.com. So let's first get over our copyright information here. All material in this presentation is copyright 2015 by Joseph Senor and PI Mall LLC. Any reproduction in physical or electronic format is not allowed without the written permission of Joseph Senor. If you wish to use this information in a presentation of your own or in other materials, please contact me at jsenor@cibir.net. So, in part 1 of Module 5, we covered the area of contracts and modifications you need to make to your contract before you start providing blog investigation services. So now in this part 2 of Module 5, I'm going to cover the area of pricing. Now here's the thing. When you're pricing this service, you need to remember that internet investigations should be priced higher than your standard rate. So for example, standard PI work is done at $75 per hour. Now, if you're going to do court research for your client, you drop the rate down to maybe $50 per hour. Well, if you're going to do a blog investigation case or other internet investigations, I suggest you start out at $125 per hour. Now, that's a lot more than your standard rate, and the thing is, you need to remember that you're providing a very specialized service when you're doing this internet investigation, or even technology-based investigation, meaning computers, laptops, tablets, cell phones, okay? Now, with these types of cases, again, it should be priced higher than your normal PI work, because you have to remember this, folks. Training like this is not something everyone will take. Even though this class is free, not every private investigator will take this class. And also remember that there is a test at the end of each module. There are now at least 10 modules in this class. So there are normally 10 questions per test. You're looking at 100 questions to complete this entire class. And on top of that, I've set it so that you have to get at least an 85% or higher in order to move to the next module. So this makes you getting a certificate in blog investigations very unique. So if you're going to provide a service that it took you a lot of effort and a lot of learning on your part to do, you need to price this properly. So again, raise your rates for internet investigations. Now, let's talk real numbers here. Kind of numbers, okay? So when you price a blog investigation case, it should be based on the number of hours that you will put into each investigation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the number of hours that it should normally take for you to do this type of work, and then all you do is multiply it by your internet investigation rate. Now, I'm going to provide you general hours. And if you're going to be starting out in this, understand, my general hours are not going to be what you're going to do in the first time. First couple of times you do a blog investigation case, it's probably going to take you double the number of hours I'm telling you. But as you get more and more experience with this, those numbers will go back down to the general numbers that I'm going to show you now, okay? So, when it comes to a blog investigation, the core work, which will always be done, will take you at least 3 hours. Okay? And I'm going to go into details of each of these areas in a few minutes. But the core work, always done, 3 hours. Undercover account creation is going to take you at least 2 hours. If you have to create a blog, an undercover blog creation, it's going to take you another 2 hours. If you're going to be monitoring a blog on a weekly basis, it's going to take at least an hour to do that work. Now, if you're going to do blog monitoring and you're going to maintain an undercover account or an undercover blog, you're going to make that 2 hours per week additional. Now, let's go into a little more detail about these areas. But remember, these are starting numbers. That means these are the minimum you would charge for that service. And again, remember, when you start off, yeah, it's going to take you longer, but as you get more experience, you'll get better and better at it, and those numbers will drop down. So one of the first things I talked about was the blog investigation core work. I told you it was 3 hours. Okay, so here's what you will always do when you're conducting a blog investigation case. You're going to get blog owner information. You're going to identify the blog software that was used. You're going to get website owner information. They may not be the same, folks. You're going to gather information on the hosting company. You're going to make a list of all the writers on that blog. You're going to get the start date of the blog. Then you're going to get the real start date of the blog. Because remember, folks, about 2 modules ago, I told you that with WordPress, that you can actually create a WordPress site today and put in so many postings and change the dates on those postings that it will make it look like this WordPress blog has been around for over a year, even though you started it today. So that's what I mean by real start date of the blog. Next, you're going to get the number of postings, a copy of each posting, a copy of any images from the blog. You're going to do a trace route of the blog hosting. You're going to do an archive.org copy of the blog. You're going to get a Google Cache listing of the blog. It's up to you if you want to actually get the Google Cache pages from it. And you're going to do a Bing cache listing of the blog. And again, if you want to get the pages from the cache, that's another option for you. Now, with the blog investigation core work, you also have a check of cross-posting of the blog. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that when somebody writes a blog post, it's on the blog, right? Yeah, of course it is. But people can then cross-post that or post it on other websites, whether it's Facebook, Tumblr, Hub Pages, whatever, LinkedIn. All they have to do is share that posting on those sites. And the way to do that is you can find it through the use of social media to see if there's cross-posting. So if it's cross-posted, then here's what you have to do as well. You have to get the cross-post blog owner, okay, because it may be cross-posted over to a blog. Then you want to get the cross-post website owner, the cross-posting hosting company, the cross-posting start date, the cross-posting real start date. Because remember, folks, I've run into a situation before where an individual had created a blog, made some postings on it, and it was cross-posted onto a couple of other blogs. One of those blogs, this person had created as well under a assumed name. And he made this blog look like it had been around for 3 years. So again, don't ever take the start date or the blog post date as real. You got to verify it, folks. Next, cross-posting copy of all the postings on that blog, cross-posting copy of any images on that blog, and then you want to do a archive.org listing of that cross-posted blog, okay? So when I say cross-post, that means where the posting from your blog you're investigating showed up at, okay? Now here's the thing. This cross-posting list that I just went over must be done for each site that the blog posting is cross-posted at or shared at. So it may be on Facebook. Guess what? You got to do all this for Facebook, folks. Okay? Some of these answers you're not going to be able to have because it may be a social network that it's on. So instead of blog owner and it's Facebook, you would do the Facebook account that it was posted under. Okay? So it's rather interesting doing this. And as you can see from the list that I just showed you, this covers the basics you will need to do for each case. Now, this list alone could take much longer than 3 hours. It all depends on how many cross-posting sites there are, how many places the post from the blog was shared at. And again, these items can change per the client's request. So make sure you're very thorough with your contract that I went over. Now, what about an undercover account creation? And what do you do with that? Well, when it comes to creating an undercover account, first thing you're going to have to remember is you're going to need to always use an anonymizing piece of software to connect to the internet, okay? And you're always going to use that anonymizing software to access the blog, to post to it, to monitor it. This is why it takes a lot longer than normal. So you can look at it like this. The account setup is an hour, because again, anonymize it first, then work your way through the system to be able to set up the account. The account backstop creation. What that is that's things like pictures you're going to use, music you would use, videos you would use, okay? That's all the information you need in order to backstop your account, your fake account, your undercover account you're creating. That's going to take another hour. The account maintenance every week is going to take an hour on its own. So 2 hours to set everything up, but if you're going to continue longer with it, it's an hour per week to be able to do this. Okay? And that's only if the client requests that the case go longer than that. Now, what about for creating an undercover blog, a fake blog? Well, when you do that, when you create an undercover blog, it's done in tandem with an undercover account. You can't do one without the other, okay? If you're going to create an undercover blog, you got to have an undercover account. Okay, so you've got to add those two pricings together. Now, when you do this undercover blog, remember, same thing applies. You've got to connect anonymously to the internet before you do any of it. Then, to set up the blog, it's going to take about an hour. Now, your blog background materials, that's your backstopping materials, those all have to be collected and used to give your blog a little more depth. In other words, a lot of postings, a lot of coverage, things like that. That's going to take another hour to set up. Now, that's 2 hours just for the blog, the undercover blog. If you're going to go longer than a week, then you're going to need weekly maintenance. In other words, you're going to have to keep adding postings and pictures and events. So that's an hour for each undercover blog as well. So you see where this is starting to stack up at times. Now, when it comes to blog monitoring, okay, this pricing refers only to monitoring the target blog only, okay? Because you don't need to monitor an undercover blog or an undercover account. You just do maintenance on it. You know, keep it up to date, keep adding postings and pictures and such. So the weekly blog monitoring includes a report on any changes or updates to the target blog. And I've set that at 1 hour. Now, one of the biggest items is that you also need to include pricing for report writing. And when it comes to writing up an internet investigation or a cyber-based case, you're going to need to spend more time on that report. And the reason is, it's due to screenshots, importing data, and formatting issues. So always add the time needed to write the report. But I suggest doing it at a reduced rate. Your internet investigation, like we said at the beginning, $125 per hour. Report writing, I would probably do $25 per hour. Okay? So that 3 hours to do your blog investigation, the core work, doesn't include report writing at all. That's something you add on later. Okay? Now, remember, these are starting numbers only. And this is the minimum you would charge for this service. Like I said before, when you first start out, it's going to take you a lot longer to do what I'm showing you here. But the more experience you get at this, the faster you're going to be at this work. So keep that in mind, folks. So you got a good idea on pricing now. So let's just remember this, folks. This blog investigations course is a free class from the PI Classroom. You can find out more about the PI Classroom and other classes we have at www.piclassroom.com. We've got over 20 other classes on DVD, and more are being created at PI Classroom. And as always, check out the latest investigative software at www.pimall.com/store. I'm adding in new investigative software this week, folks, so definitely go check that out. And I will see you in the next module.